And so we want to welcome everybody. Feel free to choose whether you want to participate in Spanish or in English. We're so glad to have you. And you are welcome to bring your questions to the discussion tonight. So we want to give you an overview of what Natural Highs is and what we do. So I'm going to pass it to you both, and you can let people know what we do.
Natural Highs is an amazing nonprofit organization that works for teens, and it provides anyone in the Boulder area, anyone that wants to come, an opportunity to engage in community activities, to learn about different topics like how to turn anxiety into your superpower and brain chemistry, of course. And it helps give people different alternatives to substances. We do AccuDetox and we drink mate. Those are just a few of my favorite parts about it.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah, continuing what Charlotte was talking about, Natural Highs really inspires people to be leaders for their peers. There are peer leaders at every group on Tuesday. I am one of which. And through Natural Highs, I've been given the opportunity to be able to spread my story and voice to people that are in need of it. So I work in schools alongside in relation to Natural Highs. It's given me that opportunity. And like Charlotte was talking about, Natural Highs helped me in my recovery through healthy alternatives such as herbs. We'll probably talk more about herbs later. My favorite part is probably just finding other people that want to have fun and not use drugs, because in high schools nowadays, I think it's pretty common that people think that everyone is doing it when that's really not true. So just more people around me are there that have the similar mindset, not wanting to use drugs, still wanting to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, great. So I started Natural Highs because at this point there's so much knowledge, specifically coming out of neuroscience, that we understand so much better now why people are sometimes drawn to using substances, and that there's really, that we can take away the shame and the stigma around that. There's meaning behind that, and there's actually an intelligence why people are drawn sometimes to unhealthy behaviors or substances. And really, once people understand that better, there's so many more choices and healthy options. And so that's what we do in Natural Highs. We want that this cutting edge neuroscience gets to people sooner. That people really have those options available. And so we do lots of different things. We offer a free after-school program for teens, like Charlotte and Cooper talked about. We offer lots of free resources for parents, and really for people all ages. So you are all welcome to be part of the Natural Highs community. You can find lots and lots of resources, and we will show you tonight where you can find those and how you can be part of it. So I want to give you an overview over our evening tonight so that you can see what you can expect. So let me share my screen with you. So I want to show you what we're going to share with you. We want to show you how really there's very interesting pieces around what substances do, how they actually work in the brain, and how healthy alternatives can actually work in the same systems. We want to show you the brain chemistry of substances or addictive behaviors and healthy alternatives, and we want to share lots and lots of local resources with you tonight, including AccuDetox, that is a really powerful acupuncture treatment for stress, trauma, and self-care. So before we dive in, I just want to say hi to everybody. And I want to see if you brought specific questions for tonight. And you feel free to unmute yourself and let us know what your questions are for tonight. You are welcome to always either unmute yourself or you can put your questions in the chat. Either way is totally fine. So, I have a question for you. What do you think would inspire young people to decide to live a healthy lifestyle, to live clean and sober, and choose not to do substances? You know, in our program for 12 years, we have done anonymous surveys after workshops, and we have learned very interesting things from teens and adults. And so I'm curious what you think. What do you think is the most inspiring piece that would motivate young people to choose a healthy, clean, and sober lifestyle? And I'm curious if you have an idea, if you want to guess. Because just as a heads up, mostly adults don't ever guess what young people say. So I'm curious. I want to tickle your brain. I'm curious what you would think. What could be the most motivating piece? So I think we have to let people know. So the number one piece that gets mentioned is actually learning about the neuroscience, learning about the brain chemistry, what substances actually do. You know, typically people think it's things like friends or acceptance or, you know, all these like wonderful things. But the interesting thing is it's actually neuroscience. It's actually learning the chemistry of what substances do. Do you want to say something why that is so important to young people?
Sure. And that's actually something we have discovered through feedback from other people like me. And I very well could be part of that feedback, because for me, in early stages of my recovery, I think seeing why I was doing things the way I was doing was really important to me, and kind of taking it less, looking at it more objectively, like this is just what's happening in your brain, and these are how these deficiencies are being created. Here's things that you can plug into instead of, that are going to go into those same neurotransmitters and all that. That really helped me kind of get a better idea of what was happening in my brain. And I think understanding that kind of felt like I had more power to take over, because it is my brain, and I get to pick kind of how it works once I learned about it.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah. I think that's what we are learning, right? That young people don't want to be told not to do drugs, but young people want to know what is actually going on. What's the detail? We keep hearing over and over that young people don't want to have like a simplified version of things. They want to learn the high level brain chemistry to then think for themselves, to be like, oh, makes total sense, what's going on and why I don't feel good, or maybe why I feel good in the moment, but not long term. And that people feel then they can make their own choices. Yeah, so that's been an interesting thing we have been learning, and this is why we do so much brain chemistry and neuroscience in Natural Highs. And the second piece, I think, is also a surprising piece of what is most helpful to young people, because it's not found very often in typical substance use prevention programs, and that is that people want healthy alternatives. They want healthy, natural, tangible things that you can do instead of using substances. And so in our program, we work with very unusual things, and I want to show you a few of them. So we work with a ritual that comes from Argentina called sharing yerba mate, and we will tell you afterwards more about that. But tangible things like that, we found are very, very helpful to people. And I don't know if, Charlotte, if you want to add something to that, why that is so powerful.
Yeah, I think when it comes to recovery, it's really important to like have something in replacement of. it's a very challenging thing to just cut something out of your life. But replacing it with something healthier is often like a very an easier way to do that and start a healthy lifestyle. Yerba mate is a great example of that, and herbs in general that can be added to yerba mate that like enhances the effects of them. And we do a lot of other healthy alternatives in this program. We make quick kits, we do AccuDetox, which we will talk more about later, and yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so tonight we want to also just give you a little bit of a view into our program, into our rooms, because we could tell you lots and lots, but you know, we want you to just have a sense of it. So we're going to share a little film with you that shows a little bit the inside of what we do, just so that you get a sense of that.
The Natural Highs program is a community built off the youth leaders and the youth who participate in it.
Brain chemistry is sort of the foundation of Natural Highs.
We talk about feelings, natural highs, and habits and rituals.
So we hear a lot from kids who participate in our programs that they have never received any of this information, you know, not in schools, not in any other programs. And certainly not in drug prevention programs. And so we'd like to bring the information that we think would make a difference to people at the age where they need it the most.
I think a lot of people would quit drugs if they knew what Natural Highs taught. I think a big part of that is that Natural Highs teaches you how to feel good on your own without the use of substance, and I feel that once people know that, they make the switch.
So if I have a chance to only meet with people one time, you know, if we get a chance to go into a school and meet with students just one time, we show them the piece that we have heard over many, many years that is the most powerful piece that they have ever seen in regards to substance use. And so if you are interested in that, we would be happy to show that to you tonight. So if you would be curious how a drug, whether that is nicotine or alcohol or marijuana, how a drug actually works, where would you start in the body? Where would you look? I'm pretty sure, right? You would say, I would look in the brain. And that's exactly where we're going to go first. So in your brain, you have all of these stringy things called neurons. Now, I want to make you guess, how many neurons do you think you have in your brain? You know, sometimes people say thousands or 100,000. Well, actually, it is 80 billion. Now, to be honest, I could never wrap my head around that number, what that actually means, until somebody gave me a visual. So how long do you think the line would be if you would tie the 80 billion nerve cells in your brain into one line? How long do you think that line would go? You know, people say, oh, from Boulder to Longmont. Actually, it would go 4 times around the world or to the moon and back. Just the neurons in your brain. Now, what does that tell you about your brain? If literally lined up, it would go to the moon and back. So my hope is that you get a sense of how delicate this system actually is that we're talking about here, and how, you know, it's interesting that we can fly to the moon at this point, but we cannot fully understand how the brain works. We still don't have the technology to understand how this system works. And when people use substances, this is really the system that we are working with. And so I just want to set the context, right? That this is a system we barely understand. It is so complex and so delicate. And so we want to show you a little bit what happens here. So if you want to understand how a substance creates a high or an effect, we need to show you the system, how it works without a drug first. So I want to show you that. So if we could put where two of these nerve cells connect, if we could put that under a microscope, and here you would have the end of one nerve cell, and here you would have the beginning of the next nerve cell. This is the space where substances create a high. So I want to show you first what happens without a drug, okay? So what would you say is your favorite feeling in the world? What would you say is your absolute favorite feeling in the world? You know, some people would say excitement. Other people would say happiness. Other people would say accomplishment. Some people would say joy or peace or relaxation. Now, what I find interesting is that we probably can relate with all these favorite feelings, and yet each human being has a special favorite feeling. So you would have more fun with this whole presentation if you would know what your favorite feeling is. So even if you don't want to say it out loud, just have it in your own mind. So I want to take the example of happiness, right? So imagine that you see a person that you really, really like, and that makes you feel really, really happy. So I want to show you how this feeling is actually created in the brain. So an experience like that starts as a sensory perception that creates literally electricity moving down the nerve cell. At the end of the nerve cell, something very interesting happens, which is that we have chemicals in these garages, and these chemicals get released through this electrical impulse and move into the synapse. And then on the other side, we have receptors that exactly match these chemicals. And the moment one of these chemicals called neurotransmitters clicks into the receptor, it creates new electricity. And that, the whole process, is what we experience as a feeling like happiness or love or excitement. And how many different ones of these neurotransmitters do you think we have? Because people typically know about 3 or 5, right? So typically people know about dopamine, people know about serotonin, or people know about adrenaline. How many different ones do you think we have altogether? Well, at this point, there's about 80 different ones that have been identified, but scientists actually think that we might have closer to 100, so that there's a bunch in there that we haven't even found yet. And so think about that, right? Every time you feel a feeling or your favorite feelings, it is literally chemicals moving, and not just in your brain, but actually throughout your whole body. So most cells in the body have receptors, actually tens of thousands of receptors for neurotransmitters. So when you wake up tomorrow morning and you remember that every one of your favorite feelings is actually made by chemicals moving around your body, would you live in a different way? Would that make a difference for you? And if so, what difference would that make for you? I want to ask you again, think about it. You wake up tomorrow morning, you remember every feeling I'm going to have today is made by actual chemicals moving throughout my body. Would that make a difference? You know, some people say, oh yeah, I would be curious what I could do to make more of these chemicals. Or would you want to know which chemical is actually responsible for your favorite feeling? And then once you know which neurotransmitter is your favorite neurotransmitter, would you want to know what to do to make more of it? Or would you want to know what you would have to eat for breakfast to make more of it? So this is the kind of stuff we do in Natural Highs. We have a class in Natural Highs called Your Favorite Neurotransmitter, where we teach everybody how to identify what your favorite neurotransmitter actually is and what you could do to make more of it. For example, what you could eat for breakfast to make more of it. Okay, so any question before we put a drug into this system? Any question? Okay, feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to add your question in the chat. Okay, so do you know how a drug actually creates a high? You know, I have asked this question so many teens, so many adults, and I don't think I have ever heard from anybody that a person would actually know how that is happening. So I want to teach you that. And if this is interesting to you and inspiring to you, I would say, please teach it to people. Show people how that actually happens, because once you understand that, I think then that's when people make different choices. Okay, so which drug should we do tonight? Which drug are you curious about? This is your time to speak up. Which drug are you curious about how it actually creates a high in the brain? We have a vote for cocaine. I want to give everybody a chance to nominate what substance, what drug you are mostly interested in. We have somebody voting for marijuana, for alcohol. Great. Now is your time to speak up. Opioids, yep. Yep. So I think I want to start with marijuana, with cannabis. Thank you. You guys are so, everybody has a different choice. That's wonderful. So I think I want to start with cannabis, with marijuana, because at this point, I think it's one of the most misunderstood drugs. So I'm going to start with that, but then my hope is that I can fill in some of the other substances as well. So let's look at how a drug like marijuana, and in particular the active psychoactive compound in cannabis, THC, how it actually creates a high in the brain. Okay, so when something gets into your body that doesn't belong, like a virus or bacteria or dirt, what does your body do with that? If something gets into your body that doesn't belong, what does your body do with that? So we have a system in the body that takes care of everything that doesn't belong, right? So we have the immune system that if something gets into your body that has no business of being there, the immune system will take care of it. And then we actually have a second system called the blood-brain barrier, that if a substance is already in the bloodstream, you know, whether somebody smoked a drug or ingested it in any other way, a drug will end up in the bloodstream. So like THC, whether somebody is smoking marijuana or vaping THC or eating an edible that contains THC, the chemical ends up being in the bloodstream and it moves towards the brain. Now, the brain has a second system, almost like a second immune system called blood-brain barrier, that even if something is already in the bloodstream, the blood-brain barrier will not let it into the brain, because the body does everything to protect the brain. Now, my question is, how would a drug like THC or alcohol or an opiate like heroin or nicotine, how will it get into this system here? Because it has to get in here to create a high. So how does it do that? I want to see if any one of you knows how that happens. How would a drug like THC or alcohol or heroin actually get into this system, tricking both of these, like the immune system and the blood-brain barrier? How would it do that? I want to see if any one of you knows how that works. So, do we have any guesses? Okay. So, the way it works is that the drug bypasses the immune system and the blood-brain barrier by playing a trick on both of these systems, by pretending that it actually does belong, by looking like something that belongs. And this is what most people don't know, is that drugs are literally copies of something that belongs. So I used to bet $100 to anybody who would tell me what THC is actually a copy of, what the neurotransmitter is called that THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, is a copy of. And to be honest with you, I have never paid the $100 because nobody knows. And when I presented this in front of conferences, in front of hundreds of people, I would ask people, raise your hand if you have heard about marijuana or cannabis. And you can imagine everybody's hands go up. And I would ask, okay, who knows what the name of the neurotransmitter is that THC is a copy of? Guess how many hands went up? Just mine. Nobody knows. So I want to ask you that. Why do you think everybody has heard about marijuana, has heard about cannabis, and nobody knows what the original neurotransmitter is that we all have, whether you have ever used marijuana or not, the original in your own brain? Yeah, why does nobody want to learn that? And why does nobody teach it? Why do you think that is? See, I think it's because nobody can make money off of it. You cannot sell people what they already have. And, once people would know what it is, I think people would be less interested in the copy. So, in schools, when we teach this in schools, I'm not telling students what it is. I ask students, I say, the first person who will text me the right answer, I will give you a prize, because I want that students go on the internet and study neurotransmitters and not just study drugs. So you can do that. You can Google it and find out. And I will tell you, it's called anandamide. And my guess is that you have never heard about it. So the original neurotransmitter that THC is a copy of is called anandamide. It was discovered in the 90s. And what do you think is the original function of a neurotransmitter that we all naturally have that THC copies? Why would nature build that into us? For what purpose? Why do you think nature was interested in helping us feel worry-free, hungry, and tired? Like, what do you think was the main function, is the main function of anandamide? So I would love to hear your guesses on that. And I tell you, that's another one that barely anybody has ever guessed. The people who discovered anandamide in the 1990s, they think that the main function of anandamide is that of an early pregnancy hormone, that it helps the implantation of a fertilized egg in the womb. And think about it, right? When is nature interested in helping somebody feel hungry, tired, and worry-free? Well, yes, as an early pregnancy hormone, right, to continue with a pregnancy. So think about it. When these copies go into the synapse, where do you think the copies go next? Yeah, you probably guessed it right. The copies go right into the receptors for anandamide. And you can see here right? That is how a drug causes a high. Now, why would a drug high feels so different from a natural feeling if a drug is just a copy of a natural neurotransmitter? And by the way, this is the same with alcohol. Alcohol copies a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is one of our main relaxing and calming neurotransmitters. Opiates like heroin or OxyContin or Vicodin are exact copies of another neurotransmitter that we have called endorphins. So how come that a drug high is so different from a natural feeling if it's just a copy? Why do you think that is? You probably guessed it right. It's because there's so many more copies than the body would naturally release. So it's literally a question of quantity. And the quantity can be dramatically higher. You know, it can be 20 times as much as the body would naturally release. It can be 200 times higher. Or in a situation like with a drug like methamphetamine, it can be like 1,500 times more than the body would release naturally. So you can see here why a drug high is so different. And can you see also why people sometimes like doing drugs? If a neurotransmitter creates such a good feeling, can you see how sometimes people want to do just more, feel more of that, more intensity around that? So that's the seduction, right? That's why people like doing drugs sometimes. Now, when we go into schools and teach that, we ask students, we say, so what do you think about this? Isn't this just the most genius invention that human beings have ever come up with? And I want to ask you the same question. Isn't this just the most genius invention that humans have ever come up with? You know, I tell you what students say. Students say, no, it's not good. Because if you copy this situation here, there's probably a fallout from that. And so what do you think the brain does next if it's flooded with these copies? How do you think the brain reacts to that? So the place where neurotransmitters are actually made is right here at the end of the nerve cell. So the factories that make these neurotransmitters, they're right here. And guess what happens when the brain is flooded with copies? The body stops making the originals. Now, in a situation like with anandamide being like your natural chill out neurotransmitter, how do you think somebody starts feeling if their body stops making their natural calming neurotransmitter? Yeah, the person will start feeling anxious. And the person will start feeling irritable and not being able to calm down after stress. Or the person will feel mood swings. And the person will probably have a hard time sleeping. Now, what would a person do if they start feeling these things? If they start feeling anxious and having a hard time sleeping and having a hard time calming down with stressful situations? Yeah, they will probably do more of the drug. They will do more of the copy. Now, this is a very important moment to realize because you can imagine how the drug will feel to the person in that moment when there's already this deficit in the brain. This is the moment where people actually fall in love with a drug. This is where people feel this drug is the solution to my problem. And do you see why the drug is the solution to the problem? It's because it addresses exactly the deficit that the drug has already created. But of course, people are not aware of that, right? So then, of course, people use more of the copy. What happens is the body pulls back more of the production. And so that is how people get into a vicious cycle that we call addiction. That is also what we call tolerance, where people need to use more and more of a drug to have the same effect or to battle withdrawal symptoms or the rebound effect. Okay, so I want to give you all a chance to just ask questions. And I want to hear if this all makes sense to you. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to put a question in the chat. Because I also then want to go to the good news, right? Like how to work yourself out of a situation like that. So like I said before, right? Every drug that gets into the synapse here and causes a high, whether that is alcohol, whether that is nicotine, whether that is opiates, everyone copies a different neurotransmitter. So you can study every drug, study which neurotransmitter system it affects and why it causes a particular rebound effect or a particular withdrawal symptom. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the different drugs, right? So alcohol works the same way in the GABA system. GABA is similar to anandamide, one of our calming neurotransmitters. So this is why when people feel the effect of alcohol and feel relaxed and disinhibited, the rebound effect, that is where people have more anxiety or feel more tension or really feel not good in their own body. And there's an interesting study that just came out where people found that people who drink just once a week regularly have chronically higher levels of anxiety and stress than people who drink less than once a week. So this is pretty dramatic that we had, in the past, that was not people's awareness that drinking regularly only once a week would cause this level of increased anxiety and stress really permanently. So this shows you a little bit about how delicate this system is and how much the body would start pulling back your own neurotransmitter production once it is manipulated with copies. Yeah. All pain medications or opiates like Vicodin, OxyContin, but also drugs like heroin or fentanyl, they copy a neurotransmitter system called endorphins. And because endorphins are our pain management system, you can see why they cause a dramatic rebound effect and withdrawal, where people have increased pain and so can develop a dependence on these drugs pretty quickly. Okay. Are you ready for the good news now? Should we go into the good news, how to heal this system? Yeah? So what do you think needs to happen first to change that, to heal this system again? What do you think needs to happen first? Yeah, the first step would have to be, you would have to quit the copies, right? Because as long as the copies are here, the body will not kick up its own production. So the first step has to be, you have to quit the copies. Now let's do that. Let's quit the copies here. Let's take out the copies. Now, how do you think this would feel to a person? If now the copies are gone, the body is not making its own yet, how does that feel? Yeah, you can imagine, right? All the rebound and the withdrawal symptoms over the top. Yeah. And so let me ask you this. Would you say this is good news in the brain or bad news in the brain? If now the brain has really nothing here to work with, because it feels terrible. That's why people have such a hard time quitting a substance, because withdrawal and rebound is really, really painful and uncomfortable. But you can see here in the brain, it's actually good news because you set up an alarm in the brain that says, wake up, you have to repair. So even though this experience is very uncomfortable, it's actually really good news in the brain. Now, just to be clear, it is not healthy to go through this process often because the more often a person goes through the process, the more sensitized a brain actually gets to addiction. So it's not healthy to go through it a lot, but it is really good to go through it in order to let the brain repair. So quitting the copies is the first step. And of course, this is where a lot of substance use and treatment programs have stopped, right? Just telling people, okay, quit, and then good luck. Fortunately, now we know so much more what could help this process be easier and faster and healthier, really. So, for example, we know now what the building blocks are for neurotransmitters. We know now what you can give your brain to help your brain make its own neurotransmitters again. So I want to make you guess. Do you know what it is? What does your brain need to actually make your feel-good chemicals like your dopamine, your serotonin? What do you need to give your brain? Or what would you have to eat for breakfast? So, I think that math is important, but I think this is even more important. I think this is what we should teach in middle schools and high schools, that teaching kids what is it actually that your brain needs to make all of these chemicals that help you feel better. So the building blocks of all your neurotransmitters are amino acids. Now, what would you have to eat for breakfast if you would want to give your brain amino acids? Yeah, you would have to eat protein, like eggs or tofu or nuts or beans and rice or fish or meat. And people are like, you mean bacon? Yes, bacon. Like anything that contains protein would be really, really important, especially for a person who wants to recover a healthy balance of neurotransmitters again. So you can really make a huge difference in what you eat in terms of your mental health. And then what else do you think? What else do you think needs to happen here to heal this system? Connection. That's very, very good, because actually you can study every single neurotransmitter and you can learn what does this neurotransmitter system need in terms of stimulation, what activity would actually release it. Now, the interesting thing with anandamide, the copy of the original that THC copies, you don't have to get pregnant to release anandamide. It also gets released after movement, after exercise. And we know now that exercise is not just releasing anandamide, but it's actually releasing lots of neurotransmitters. So obviously you can see that here, right? You need to stimulate your brain to actually produce and release the neurotransmitters. So movement and exercise are really powerful. Then, of course, there's lots and lots of other healthy things that would support the production of neurotransmitters. For example, all of this process here happens in over 80% of water. Did you know that over 80% of your brain is actually water? So you can imagine that if somebody is dehydrated, you can get anxiety just from that, because it makes this whole production and release of neurotransmitters really challenging. So, being hydrated, drinking water would support you feeling better and would help your brain build neurotransmitters. So, like I said, with every neurotransmitter system, you can study the alternatives, you can study the activities that would support that system to function. Okay, so I want to take a moment and give you a chance to ask questions. Also, feel free to ask questions if you have questions about particular substances in terms of what would help them get produced or what activities produce them. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Avani, can I ask a question?
Please. Yes. Wonderful.
Understand the difference with marijuana,
Mhm.
and why is it that that feels like for youth is one is more accessible, but then to youth it feels like, oh, it's nothing.
Right. So this is very interesting, right? So we know now that especially the THC products that are now available really cause severe imbalances in the brain. And so I just want to show you that you get a sense of that. So, because of course, marijuana in particular, people think that it is natural, right? That it is a plant from the earth. And so people think it's harmless, or obviously it's advertised as, it's good for you. It has all these medicinal effects. There's medical marijuana. It's very confusing to people. So guess how much THC content the plant that grew out of the ground naturally had, the original marijuana plant. Guess how much THC it had? How much THC content? So the original plant, before it got manipulated by humans, had under 1% THC. And then you have heard that people used marijuana in the 60s, right? Like Woodstock and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and so on. How much THC content did the marijuana have in the 60s? Well, it had about 2%. And then I'm sure you've heard, especially from the cannabis industry, that people had this hope or this promise that it would be safer than, if legal marijuana would be safer than black market marijuana. So I know the concentration of THC that black market marijuana that was seized by law enforcement in 1997. So that was before legalization in Colorado. Guess how much THC content marijuana had, black market marijuana, before legalization? It was 4.5% average. 4.5, okay? So now, in 2024, the marijuana that is sold as natural flower, right? So what is sold as a natural plant. Guess how much THC concentration it has? At this point, it's between 25 and 35%. So that is what is sold as organic, natural cannabis. Now, unfortunately, that's not what young people are using mostly. At this point, most young people actually vape THC. And that's another confusing piece to people, because people think vaping is less dangerous than smoking. The problem is that, guess how much THC content the THC vapes contain? It's up to 99% THC. So when you look at this list, right, that the original natural plant had under 1% THC, and now the products that mostly young people, but really people all ages, are using is up to 99% THC. What do you think that does in a brain? See, it has effects in a human brain that we didn't even see 15, 20 years ago. So I tell you about some of them that are fairly new, that we haven't seen before. This concentration in the market, cannabis market, happened. So for example, we see a sharp increase in people who have psychosis from high THC products. So people who go into paranoia, people who go into psychosis. So really, really severe mental health problems where people get hospitalized. And it's very challenging to get people come back from situations like that. Or another new development that we're seeing is what's called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, where people start vomiting. It's also called cyclic vomiting. And it's often not recognized because even medical professionals are not aware that this is actually an issue of high THC concentration. And again, right, it's very difficult to treat that. It's very difficult to help people come back from that severe imbalance in the brain. I think one of the reasons why it's so tricky, specifically with marijuana, is that most of the rebound effect and the withdrawal effect from marijuana are less physical symptoms and more mental health symptoms. So the symptoms people typically experience initially are things like anxiety and depression, but people have a hard time recognizing that it is caused by THC, because of course in the moment the copy feels like that it is treating that issue, right? And this is also confusing to people that at this point THC marijuana gets advertised as a medicine for anxiety and PTSD and depression. And so do you see how confusing that is to people? Because in the moment, yes, the copy feels like a relief, but long term, it actually causes much more of that problem. So Ana Silvia, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. This is why, people need to learn the specifics, because young people and people all ages, they need to see that, because that is the only way that people understand that confusion. Why a drug can feel so good in the moment and like medicine, and why in the long run it actually causes more and more of the same problem. Any other thoughts or questions? Because we are happy to show you a few more of the alternatives and kind of tools and strategies that we are offering in our program to help people heal this situation. And I just want to be clear, in Natural Highs, we're not just supporting people who deal with a substance use issue or an addiction. We also support lots and lots of people who come to us to get support around mental health, around anxiety or around depression or around ADHD. And we also have lots of people participate in Natural Highs who just are curious, who just want to learn how humans tick and what could help us feel better. So I just want to be clear, we are not a treatment program. We are, just like Cooper and Charlotte said, we are a peer mentor program. We teach people all ages how to become more knowledgeable around all of those things. And then either, be peer mentors in a formal way, like going into schools with us, or to be a good human for your friends and your family. So we really welcome everybody, not just people who deal with substance use issues. Okay, so would you like to see a little bit more about resources that we offer in the community? Okay, I want to invite you guys back. Okay. So we do a lot of different things in Natural Highs, and we really, we ask young people, what is it that you would like to see? What is it that you would like to create? And so we want to invite any high school age teen is welcome to come to our free after school program on Tuesdays in Boulder, where we do lots and lots of different things. And I pass it over to one of you to let people know a little bit about what we do on Tuesdays.
Okay, yeah. We did speak a little bit about earlier, but just more depth. Actually, I'm gonna let you begin.
Our Tuesday program is, it's just a community gathering of teens. We start off by doing a yerba mate ritual. And
Do you want to explain to people a little bit more about why we're doing this? Because
It
a
is-
lot of people might not know what it is and might not ever have seen it, and might look at this and be like, "Wow, that looks interesting."
yes, it is an Argentinian, an Argentinian like ritual that helps people connect. It's almost like it's a healthier version of what we do in America with drugs. We often think of connection as like smoking together or drinking together, but in Argentina, they drink yerba mate together, and that's a healthier way of connecting. And we begin every Natural Highs meeting with that, and then we get to know each other a bit, and sometimes there is lessons or guest speakers that come and teach us interesting things.
And I want to say one more thing about the yerba mate in particular, because people see that and they're like, you use herbs in Natural Highs, like you smoke weed, and we're like, no, we don't smoke weed. And there's a difference, of course, between an herb like marijuana and an herb like yerba mate, and we want people to be really knowledgeable about that. Now, one of the interesting pieces about yerba mate is that it contains the whole spectrum of amino acids. So you just learned that amino acids are the building blocks for all of our feel-good chemicals, for dopamine, for serotonin, for your real anandamide. And so imagine this ritual, this social ritual coming from Argentina, and now used really all over South America and really all over the world, where people don't, toast with alcohol or with something unhealthy, but where people give each other a cup that literally will nourish your brain. We are very excited about that in Natural Highs, that here is a social ritual where you can express your connection to somebody, but you're actually doing it with, yerba mate is now considered one of the most healthy plants on the planet. So that's the reason we use it. And we have heard from countless people that if you have a hard time, and if you would feel drawn to, an addictive behavior or an unhealthy behavior, it is really great if you have an alternative, like a tangible alternative that can make you feel better in the moment. Yeah.
Something that I'm gonna talk about with Natural Highs. Will you actually hand me that little? Is something that we offer called AccuDetox. Here's a diagram of the ear. All these little points, I'm not sure how well you guys can see, but all these little points are points where a reaction will be caused in the body from a point of acupuncture. Or what we also offer is ear seeds, which is like a less, it's not a needle, it's just a little seed that'll poke into you. Something that we do at Natural Highs and throughout Boulder, there's actually 14 free AccuDetox clinics that we offer every week. And you can go to boulderacudetox.org to find those. And yeah, people like me are certified in AccuDetox and they can give it to you there. For me, AccuDetox was like a huge anti-anxiety mechanism that I would receive at Natural Highs. People like my age giving it to me also feels cool. And then that inspired me to get trained as well. And Charlotte will be getting trained soon as well. Yeah, so there's 5 points in the ear that we use with AccuDetox. And each of those points refers to a system in the body. And we can get into that for a while, so I'll just stay at surface level. And it supports your like anti-anxiety systems of your body, so like your sympathetic nervous system, and a few other points as well. So people come to Natural Highs, same building, Tuesdays at 5:30 just to get AccuDetox, or those other 13 clinics to receive that, as maybe they use it for trauma work, all sorts of things. Even if they're just like a healthy, happy person, they still appreciate it because it feels great. And yeah, all the kids at Natural Highs can receive that too. And it's pretty out there that kids my age can get trained, and Colorado right now is the only state where that is accessible, I believe. So I think that's special too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the protocol, the ear AccuDetox protocol, was started to get people off heroin in the 1970s. And it was more successful than methadone to get people off heroin. And now we understand because it treats the imbalances underneath. And it's still used a lot in addiction treatment centers, but it's actually mostly used now after trauma and disasters. So we actually started the day after the King Soopers tragedy here in Boulder. And we got so much positive feedback. People got so many benefits from it that year we gave out over 4,000 free treatments. And we haven't stopped since then because people really feel that it is super supportive around mental health, around being a healthy alternative to not having to self-medicate with substances, and including some people with physical symptoms where people experience pain relief or people can sleep better. So this is kind of like so Natural Highs, I think, because it's like, okay, can you find a healthy alternative? So rather than reaching to marijuana to find stress relief or to alcohol to find stress relief, can you show up at an AccuDetox place, and you don't need to make an appointment. You just show up, and it's done in a group environment. So people are just, sitting together in a circle, getting the 5 points needles in their ear. And the other cool thing is you feel the immediate benefit, right? So it's not something that, in 6 months you're going to feel better, but it's like you feel better right away. And that, of course, is also very, very powerful.
Another thing I've heard with AccuDetox, for people that are using it as a recovery and alternative type situation, is that, like Avani was saying about the immediate response, is that most people that, let's say, are recovering from something in specific, like let's say heroin or cocaine, when they receive it, they often will say that the feeling they're getting is kind of going into what their drug of choice had been, which I think is really cool for people. Obviously, you're not going to get like high per se from AccuDetox, but some people honestly do. Like they receive it and they're convinced that the needle was dipped in something. I think that's really cool, to even just from like a neuroscience perspective, that your own kind of shows you your own brain can make these things naturally. So yeah.
That is such a good point, right? So I think especially in the US culture, we are so like, on all corners, people want to sell us something. And like, you can buy this and it's going to make you feel better, or, take this and it's going to make you feel better. And what we want to teach in Natural Highs is that there's so many ways you can help your body feel better, that it's not about money. It's not about, going into the next expensive thing. That there's so many tools available to really help spark your own brain chemistry, your own body. I do think that is a big deal, especially in the US culture. This is also, by the way, why we teach so much about herbs. And people are like, what do you mean herbs? So yes, we work with lots of different herbs that are actually good for you, that are non-addictive, that are healthy, that are really cheap and sometimes grow right around you. You don't even have to buy it. And, a lot of these herbs work in the same neurotransmitter systems as drugs do. And I'm going to let you both, you can share one of your favorites, but So I want to share my favorite. So one of my favorite herbs is passion flower. And most people have never heard that there's herbs that are good for mental health issues. You know, people know that herbs are good for stomach aches or sleep or things like that. But not a lot of people know that there's lots of amazing non-addictive herbs, for example, for anxiety. So passion flower is one of them, and it's the one that we work with in Natural Highs. And it works in the same system as alcohol and benzodiazepines like Xanax, but it doesn't copy GABA like alcohol and Xanax does, but it actually sensitizes and heals your GABA receptors. So, and just like you said, right, it's not going to make you feel high like a drug, but it goes in the same direction. And there are people who have tried passion flower and have said, wow, I can feel that it makes you very relaxed. And it feels really good in the moment. And over time, it actually benefits your own GABA system. It will help you learn and get better at actually relaxing naturally. So I would nominate that as my favorite. So do you guys have a favorite?
She also has passion flower tattooed on herself. So I would say my favorite herb is hops. And usually when people hear hops, they think of like beer, which it's brewed from hops. Except hops, I like to drink just like loose leaf. Hops is like related to the marijuana plant, but it's got a whole spectrum of other effects. I know it supports sleep, which is something that is super great for me, being able to sleep easily. Yeah, I mean, you can buy it in a can, so you can and it tastes like beer or whatever. So if you like that, that's a good alternative, and you can really like fake yourself out into using that, because it seems like you're drinking something out of a can, but it's healthy and supports your health. Yeah.
I want to say something about the hop tea because it's so brilliant, and we're now helping people, so many people, get off alcohol, get off THC, with hops in particular. And so there's a company here in Boulder called Hoplark, and they actually came out of the microbrewery scene, and they got sick and tired of the constant drinking and the constant hangovers. And so they were like, let's experiment. And they started brewing hops without alcohol. And they created this beverage that Cooper just mentioned. It's called hop tea. It's not a tea. It's in a can. It's in the beverage section in lots of grocery stores around here, but you can also order it. They ship it all across the United States for free. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant, healthy alternative. It's completely non-addictive. It's completely good for you. It doesn't cause any rebound or tolerance. It's a healing herb, especially for anybody who has used sedative drugs like alcohol or benzodiazepines or even opiates. So yeah, that is an alternative everybody needs to know about. It can also help people buffer the rebound and the withdrawal from sedative drugs. So yeah. What is your favorite?
My favorite herb would probably be Angelica. It's a very calming herb. It definitely helps with stress and anxiety for sure. That's like the most what I notice. I also notice that it's very like grounding. It feels very like, it makes me feel centered. And that herb, like in combination with like the community and like comfortable environment that Natural Highs has, like that's a very nice combination of just like stress relief.
It's beautiful. And I saw some of you here have nominated Damiana, which is wonderful because Damiana is one of our favorites too. So we actually have this this quest that we want to find healthy alternatives for every single drug that people do and abuse. And so Damiana is our alternative to marijuana. It's probably the closest to marijuana, and it is completely healthy. It's completely good for you. It's also calming. It's inspiring. And so, yeah, and for anybody who's now curious, about where do I find these herbs, you can get them in any herbal apothecary. So we have Rebecca's Apothecary here in Boulder. We have the Little Herbal Apothecary in Lafayette. There's now a new apothecary opening in Longmont. And you don't really need to know anything about herbs. You just go to these apothecaries. Everybody there is a trained herbalist, and you can ask people. You can say, can you recommend herbs for anxiety? Or can you recommend herbs so that it would help me not drink alcohol? So just know that there's a huge, just so many beautiful herbs. And, I remember my childhood when I grew up in Germany. When we were sick, we wouldn't buy anything in a pharmacy. My grandmother would go to her cupboard in the kitchen, and she would take out chamomile tea and lemon balm tea, and we would make our own medicines like that. And so that's what we want to teach in Natural Highs, that there's so many wonderful herbs that are healthy, that are good for you. And our goal is really that everybody, every family, every young person creates their own apothecary at home. So when you have a hard time, that you have things to go to, because really we humans are wired to look for things that make us feel better. We put this now on people that are labeled addicts. We're like, you can't do that. You can't use anything to make yourself feel better. Everybody else is drinking their beer and their wine and eating their pizza and ice cream, right? So I think we need to change that. I think it's human to want to do things to make us feel better, but we can get smarter about that, and we can have our tools about that with that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad, Josie, that you nominated Damiana. And by the way, we are working on an herb book because we're aware that there's not that many, that there's not that much information out on herbs for mental health and as alternatives for substance use. And we're working on a community book where we put all of these herbs together. So just stay connected with us. You can be part of our community. You can go on naturalhighs.org on our website. You can sign up with your email, and you can be just plugged in. You find out when our presentations are, when our events are, and also hopefully when we get our act together and finish our herb book here pretty soon, and other materials. Yep. Yes, and we created the hub, right? BoulderAcuDetox.org. So that's a website so that you can always find exactly updated locations, days, times when we offer the free AcuDetox. On BoulderAcuDetox.org is also a tab for training. We offer regular trainings so that you can get certified in how to do the AcuDetox. It's a 3-day training that is then followed up by some supervised treatment requirements and self-study. And we offer this training about every 2 to 3 months. So you can go on BoulderAcuDetox.org, go under the training tab. You can put your name on the pre-registration form. You don't have to pay, but this is how you find out about the next training dates. Okay. All right, we want to open it up for questions. Any other questions you have? Maybe we can show people another healthy alternative that we have developed. Who of you wants to introduce the Quit Kit? Can you do that?
Okay. This sparkly little bag right here. Should I open it?
Mm-hmm. Can I tell the backup story? So, we do regular rounds and focus groups with young people asking what are the most challenging problems right now that young people face around substance use. And a little while ago, people here in Boulder County have identified, of course, the fentanyl crisis as one of the biggest issues. And so we're doing a lot around that. We give out free Narcan, which is an antidote to help somebody get out of an overdose where you can save a life. So we give out free Narcan to everybody. So you can come on Tuesdays and we will give it out for free. And the other issue that was identified by young people as one of the most challenging substance use issues right now is vaping and nicotine addiction. And I don't know if you know that Juul, who was one of the biggest companies selling vapes to especially young people, they actually changed the nicotine molecule into a nicotine salt. And nicotine was already one of the most addictive substances on the planet. And they changed the molecule to make it even more addictive. And so teens have identified that, right? That vaping right now is one of the biggest problems around substance use among teens. And then the question was really, what are we going to do about that? And we heard from young people that really a lot of the efforts that were used in schools, the posters in the bathrooms and the prevention programs are not really working that well. And so we said, okay, what if we would create something that would actually work? And so we set out to create the best vaping quit kit on earth. And we worked on this for months and we tried lots and lots and lots of different things. And Cooper will now show you what we created.
All right. There's a bunch in here. First off, what we get the best feedback on is toothpicks and specifically mint. Because I know that's a popular even cigarette or vaping kind of flavor. Gum is another thing we get a lot of feedback on. Again, it's the oral fixation. And again, spearmint. Little fidget things like this ring. Just because usually when somebody's quitting nicotine, they're either agitated or just can't really focus or sit still. So little things like this cute little guy. There's a bombilla in here, which is this straw with, you can see the end of it. There's little holes. So just like this, you can put loose leaf herbs into the gourd or cup or jar, whatever you're using, doesn't matter. And let it steep for a second and just put this straight in there. You don't need to filter anything. This filters it for you. So that's really cool. We put actual yerba mate packets in there that are in tea bags. So you don't necessarily need the bombilla for these, but this is yerba mate. We've talked lots about yerba mate.
And I just want to say, right, that of course this action, drinking from a bombilla, is probably the closest healthy thing you can do to smoking or vaping, right? You can see how close it is, but it's totally good for you. Yeah.
I'm not sure if the bracelet's in this one, but usually there's a bracelet with a little rock on one of the, whatever you want to call it, beads. And here's an essential oil, and you can kind of dab this onto that porous rock, and it seeps in there. So that's it lasts for a while, and you can wear that on your wrist, and you can smell it. This one's lime. Sounds pretty good. Mints, same idea as the toothpicks, and gum, oral fixation. And yeah, I think that's it in there. And the bag itself is rather fun.
So, and again, right, this is just what we learned is that if you in the moment, instead of using a vape, if you have something else to do with your hands, with your mouth, that is how people can actually work with that. That is how people can actually successfully get out of an addiction. So if you are now super interested in getting one of these quit kits, we give them out. You can get in touch with us. We would love to get these quit kits to people who need support quitting vaping. These quit kits can also help people not start vaping. They're really good for anxiety. They give people healthy coping skills that are very tangible in the moment. So yeah, just a few examples of things we do. So just to let you know how you can connect. So like I said, we run a free after-school program for high school age teens every Tuesday afternoon. You find all the information about that on our website, naturalhighs.org. If you want to try the AccuDetox, you can go onto our hub, boulderacudetox.org, and find a close one to you when you have time. Again, you don't need to register. You just show up and you can try it out. And if you are curious about presentations like this tonight, go on naturalhighs.org, sign up for our emails, and you can be part of our community and learn about all the different resources. And we are very grateful to the city of Boulder for supporting events like this and for supporting our work, prevention work in schools and our after school program. And we are also very grateful to the I Have a Dream Foundation, who supports us in making these resources available in Spanish. And I just want to do a shout out to Myra and Elena for interpreting our evening tonight. Yes, so I see there's questions, right? So let us know. Feel free to speak up because we want to be here for you and answer any questions.
I think they are above.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we mix the herbs with yerba mate. So shamans and folk healers and traditional medicine people, this is how they make medicine. Do you want to hold that one? This is how they make medicine, right? They would pick certain herbs for a particular person, and then they would mix yerba mate with the herbs because yerba mate makes other herbs more powerful. And you can brew yerba mate with any temperature besides boiling hot water, because you want to preserve the amino acids, right? So boiling hot water would actually destroy the amino acids. So you can brew mate warm or hot or cold, just not boiling hot. And yes, we have scholarship opportunities now for AccuDetox training for the certification. If you go on boulderacudetox.org under the training tab, there are now applications for scholarships, both for Spanish trainings and for English trainings. We would love to have you. Okay. Anything else? Yes. So there was a question about what about medications like methadone or interventions like ibogaine. We know that for some people, methadone has saved their lives, because one of the issues where most people die from an overdose is when people leave treatment or when people leave jail. So when people have stayed clean for a while and their tolerance is zero, is all the way down, and if in that moment a person relapses with the dose that they previously were used to, that dose is an overdose, right? So this is where a lot of people die from overdose deaths. And so in those situations, methadone can really save somebody's life. So we are totally in support of that. It's just over time, long term, a medication like methadone is not healing the endorphin system, right? Because it's also an opiate. It's also a copy of the endorphin system. So it can be a lifesaver for a while, but then if a person is interested in really healing their own brain, then they would have to find other alternatives. Yeah. So we know that addiction and substance use is very complicated and that different things work for different people. There's lots of different approaches. We don't recommend energy drinks. I know. We have taught so many people about yerba mate, and they moved from energy drinks to yerba mate, and then were totally blown away how much energy they had because, of course, energy drinks steal your energy long term. So, yes, I think as a culture, we need to get much smarter. We need to learn about really the empowering strategies. So, yeah. So, before we leave, I want to share my screen with you. And we have an evaluation form. It would be so amazing if you would like to do that for us. So let me see if I can pull that up for you. Because the city would really like to hear your feedback. So here is a QR code for English. And you can just hold your phone on that if you want. And then here is a QR code in Spanish. So if you just open the camera in your phone, you can grab that link for the eval in Spanish. And this one is the code for English. That would be so helpful. This one is the Spanish one again. Yeah, we would love to have you be part of our community. So we do these presentations once a month. And our next one will be on vaping and more details around nicotine addiction and vaping and how to quit and how to never start and how much money you save if you never start. And that one will be in April. And all the dates and topics are on our website, naturalhighs.org. And if you sign up for our emails, you will get all these invitations and flyers into your inbox. So that would be wonderful. So let us know if you have any questions left before we leave for tonight. And otherwise, we would love to hear what your takeaways are. What do you take away from tonight? Yes, like I said, right? If you're interested in the training for AccuDetox, go on boulderacudetox.org on our website. And under the training tab, you can pre-register. You can put your name and email, and then you will get information when the training dates are happening. And I'm going to find the links for you directly for the evaluations.
Or if they wanted, if they're on their phone, you could go back to sharing your screen. Never mind. I was going to say take a screenshot, but that went out.
I think I can find the direct links here. I think this is the easiest for people.
You can also, is it on the website?
I got it. Okay, let me put this here in the chat. How is that? Yes, you can grab the English link and you can grab the Spanish link. It would help us so much because the city really wants to hear if this is helpful to parents and people. And this is how you can support our work and that we can keep offering it for free.
I am happy to do that.
Thank you.
Do it right away.
Wonderful.
I actually wrote in the chat, I am watching from Chicago,
Oh,
and I didn't know if you have like retreats or workshops or anything for kids who don't live in the Boulder area and are looking for resources like this. And I'm like, this is like been mind-blowing for me, but I just don't know if in the south side of Chicago I can find places that are doing this kind of work with youth, you know.
how did you find out about us?
Well, you're going to laugh, but Laura McCafferty, Laura Weedville is my sister.
Okay. Amazing.
You know Laura?
I think I...
She's a social worker in Boulder County. She's been
Okay.
in your AccuDetox program.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Yes. Oh, fantastic.
To you.
Wonderful. So just know, I think the best way for you to stay connected is through our emails, naturalhighs.org, because also we have a video version of our whole Natural Highs course on our website, right? So obviously it's not the same as sitting around together with cool people like Charlotte and Cooper and sipping yerba mate, but it's probably the next best thing, right? Is to watch the whole course on video. And so just stay connected. And hopefully we're, developing more materials like books and ways to be involved with us. We have a peer mentor who started Natural Highs in Australia. We have a peer mentor who started Natural Highs in the Arctic with Inuit youth. So, we are hoping that people will come to the south side of Chicago, but I can't promise. I don't know when that will happen.
Well, I will definitely get on the mailing list. So that's
Super.
a great start.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being part of it.
All right.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you for dialing in tonight. Awesome. Have a good night and hope to see you soon.